Yeah, it's quite possibly one of the biggest Frostwall simps out there. And today I want to discuss Wall Force, which is basically Frostwall's little brother. So Frostwall initially in PvE1, you could collide projectiles with it, and then projectiles AoE components would create explosions, letting you shotgun the boss with things like kinetic blasts and just various other skills. But that was very broken, and that has been removed. For whatever reason, they reintroduced that skill into PvE2, and all of its former glory, you could collide projectiles with it and shotgun things again. And for whatever reason, this time around, you could also use various like AoE skills that were not projectiles, like hell, even like melee splash, and just abuse the shit out of that kind of stuff. And after nerf, after nerf, after nerf, after nerf, you can no longer do most of that stuff because that's really fucked up. But for whatever reason, that bounced back here, and we have Wall Force now, and I'm here for it. I will say they fixed a lot of the problems with those kind of like the previous iterations of Frostwall, as from what I can tell. While I still think this is pretty messed up. This right here, where it can only be struck by 13 projectiles for dissipating. I imagine this goes up with level or quality. We don't know yet. We'll get the level 2020 gems like Wednesday or Thursday, so 2 to 3 days from now. And this cooldown being really, really, really big. This means that you can't abuse it with like the most abusable cases, which is skills that have an insane amount of projectiles. So it's inherently more fair than the other iterations of it were. And because the cooldown is really big, you can't do it for a long period of time. So I think there's a pretty interesting potential abuse case with Saboteur if it works, but I'm not positive on that because in Ziggy's video, he mentioned that you can only have one Wall Force out at a time. I assume he meant that you can only have one Wall Force out at a time based on like cooldown recovery speed, and you can't literally have 2 at a time because that's going to be harder to set up. So, but I guess we'll see. Unless GG gives us more info, we won't really know until it goes live. I don't really see a orb tag here or anything that would suggest this is limited to one. So my assumption is you can have more than one, but I guess we won't really know until like the patch goes out. So with Saboteur, like Clockwork, obviously this goes to 40% increased cooldown recovery rate, which is going to be fantastic with Wall Force. But I want to talk about Perfect Crime. I did a really weird concept with Ball Lightning of Static Spellslinger on Saboteur because with skills that actually have a baked-in cooldown recovery speed, if like let's say when Ball Lightning of Static, if I have 1 charge remaining, when I trigger it with Triggerbots, it's going to still create 2 Ball Lightning of Static because it gets around there only being like, it's not going to use 2 cooldowns when you trigger it twice with Triggerbots. It just uses 1. So what I find interesting is when you spell sling a Wall Force, I could see it creating 2 walls. I don't see why it wouldn't do that. And if that's the case, it effectively way more than it's just this ascendancy is just so good for this. I guess what I'm getting at. So it's like he has the 40% cooldown on like Clockwork, but if this works the way I want it to, it would literally double the amount of hits you could potentially have on a wall. Because if it creates 2 just like right next to each other, projectiles can only collide with 1 wall anyway, but they'll just sit in the same place. So if you just like bang through the first one, it'll just go right to the second one, right? So I don't know. We'll see. But it seems insane if it works. Over those. First, I want to touch on like how various ways to just adjust the cooldown to make it more usable for a longer period of time. So the most obvious one is going to be Spellslinger. Spellslinger is, I think, like the intended way to use this, where you just sling it and it gets 38% increased cooldown recovery speed at max level, or I think 41 or 42 at level 21, which is already a pretty big way at cutting that 9 seconds down. But there are other things you can do, like you can do Saboteur's ascendancy with cooldown recovery speed. I'm just going to refer to that CDR from going forward, is 40% now, so that's equivalent to this amount. And then you can get 15 to 20% in your belt, 15 to 20% in your boots. And then all of a sudden you're like at around 100% cooldown recovery speed. And if you have that, it's going to be 9 divided by 2.08 because the cooldown recovery speed mod, which you can find on the CDR wiki, is 1 plus the cooldown recovery speed divided by 100. So it's 1 divided by 2.8. You end up with like just over 4 seconds, which is relatively low. So you could actually have pretty decent uptime in that if you're not creating too many projectiles or attacking too fast. Pretty similar, honestly, to the melee splash build that I just did, like abusing that, where it's like you need to balance your attack speed so like your shotgunning effects are essentially up longer. But this is like the obvious way, right, to do this with Spellslinger and then other sources of cooldown recovery speed. Oh yeah, there's also a minor node you can get from the Delirium Bloodlines, 15% on one of the travel nodes. But advanced trap support, I think this is going to be less useful. But it is a massive amount of cooldown recovery speed. So it's like automating Spellslinger sounds really comfy. This sounds very clunky, but 107% is literally 1% off of all of that stuff that I just talked about. So this is like a massive amount. And on top of that, on the tree, you have cooldown recovery speed in this cluster right here, but you also get +1 cooldown use of traps that or have a cooldown or whatever. So you you could stockpile multiple uses of it. So I think that's something you consider. It's very clunky, but if you like really need single target for certain setups, I could see this maybe actually making sense. Now, what kind of skills can you actually abuse with this? So the easiest way to find that is to just go here and then just go projectile and AoE, because that is literally all the answers. Now, they're all not all going to work perfectly with this or work well with it, so I'm going to go over the ones that I think do. I'm going to touch on like ones that I was saying, like so Caustic Arrow Poison I think is a good example of one that theoretically works really well with it. Anytime Caustic Arrow Poison hits something, it explodes and creates an AoE that can overlap, but the problem with that is when you're playing a build like Caustic Arrow Poison, you're generally going to have like 8 to 10 projectiles, and if you have 10 projectiles, and then let's say this only goes up to 20 at level 20, you can only attack it twice before it just fully shatters, and you don't really get that much out of it, right? Because you just have far too many projectiles. So even though it makes sense, it's like, I generally think it's going to be a balancing act of projectile count versus like cooldown and all that stuff. So the really high projectile count ones, I think actually unintuitively are not that great for it. Next one that I think this one's actually very, very obvious is, well, I guess I'll touch, I'm just going to go in order, just like down the list, but Ice Shot of Pen, perfect example, I think potentially a really good use case for this. So with Ice Shot of Pen, you're generally going to try to do a Mana Forge Cast and Crit Tornado setup so that it can create an explosion when it hits the boss and when it hits the tornado, and then the explosion from hitting the tornado can also hit the boss again, right? It can only shoot one projectile at a time, literally. So it's kind of perfect with this, in that it will, I guess technically you could split off of Fury Valve into the wall and get more. Anyways, it's a low projectile count skill, just like it has to be. So it kind of could last potentially for a really long time. Like if you're just using Ice Shot of Pen Mines or something, each attack is only going to be one projectile, so it's only going to lower that count by like 1. And if it goes up to like 20, that's like 20 hits you get, and that's quite a bit of time of like actually getting shotgun like potential off of it, right? Next skill I think actually super obvious with this and really, really good with it is Elemental Hit of the Spectrum. So Elemental Hit of the Spectrum, every time you play this skill, at least now, I think it's fully known, right, that when you play it as bows, you should use Mana Forge Cast and Crit Tornado, and when you play it as wands, you should use Mana Forge Tornado, because when Elemental Hit of the Spectrum hits anything, it creates an AoE explosion effect. Most projectiles only do that at end of flight. Hit of the Spectrum is one of the really good ones that creates it on every time it hits an enemy, just like Ice Shot. So normally you're getting 2 hits out of this regardless, because it's going to hit the tornado. But let's say you have 3 projectiles, right? You have the multi-shot from the tree, and then the wand mastery for an additional one. You attack, you hit the tornado, explodes, hits the boss. The skill actually hits the boss again. That's 2 hits. And then those 3 projectiles, because the other 2 that literally have to miss both of those because they've already been collided with the projectile, collide behind the wall, they explode for 3 more hits. So you're looking at like 2.5 times your damage, or some amount lower depending on how low this less damage goes. This might actually be the only thing that scales with this. That would be really unfortunate, but I guess we'll see. Lightning Arrow, similar to this. Generally, when you play it, you're going to try to have a Mana Forge Cast and Crit Tornado. If you're using it for single target skill, generally people aren't going to do that because there are just better bow skills to use for single target, and you can Mana Forge them or Ballista them. But if you're just using Lightning Arrow as your only skill that deals damage, you can Mana Forge Cast and Crit a Tornado, which will create the same thing with LE hit. Like it'll hit the tornado, create an AoE on the boss, and an arrow will actually hit the boss again, so you get 2 hits. Now, we don't really have a mechanic like this to compare it to, because normally only one projectile can collide with something, but if these lightning arrows all collide with the wall behind it, I assume that they will be able to create an AoE on the boss behind them, or near them. It's like 18 meters, some ridiculous amount where it can create an AoE on something. But I could see it only like not working because they already did that, or only doing it once. It's unclear because we don't really, again, have, like this does create an AoE component, but it's not like an explosion, so I could see this one not working. I assume it will. Now, I will say it is going to be a little bit harder to abuse just because you can't get CDR on the Wall of Force from Spellslinger or something like that. So your cooldown is going to be quite a bit lower unless you do the weird trap setup I was talking about. So I'm not sure entirely if this will actually make sense anyway. Now, just going through the rest of them. We'll see how explosive arrow works. I actually don't know. Spawn was actually curious about if this would stick in the wall behind it, because these do stick in the wall and create explosions as is. So I'm not sure if that will actually work or be practical, because you generally don't want them to chain. But if only one chains, it's probably not a big deal. But I assume this one will not be practical. All right, that's actually, man, there's actually not a lot. I figured there was way more than that. Anyways, moving on. God, one of like the OG ones with Frostwall. Fireball. So Fireball, normal projectile, it only explodes when it is end of flight. So if you have Fireball and it chains 47 times, it will only explode on that last possible enemy. With this, when you Fireball, it's going to, let's say you Frostwall behind them, you Fireball, shoot out fireballs because you have GMP with it and you're like a poison assassin who's going to take advantage of a base crit on your wand because Fireball's really low base crit and you don't get damage from GMP. Anyways, weird build ideas aside, if you Fireball into the force wall, one's going to hit the boss, and then ideally, I assume, man, see, it's so weird because I assume that the force wall will create only end of projectile flight behavior if the projectiles are at their end of flight. So this is the one that's going to take some testing because let's say for example, you have no pierce. Fireball will hit the boss, explode, and then 4 will continue on and hit the wall. Those will explode and hit the boss. You'll get your 5 hits. But let's say you have one source of 1 pierce. 1 pierces through the boss, creates no explosion. Goes to the wall behind it and explodes. You get another hit on the boss. But what's going to happen with those other 4? I'm unsure because until we actually get to test with this, that's the first thing I'm going to do in the league launches. I'm going to test this and verify how and which skills actually work and how they work with it, because that part is going to be unclear and probably should be tested before you commit too hard to something. Rolling magma. Boy, do I want to know how this one works. This one is strange because rolling magma can't collide with tornado, and skills like this can't collide with tornado skill to get it hits from there's no explosion when it collides with stuff. It just collides on touching the ground, but it is a ground targeting skill. The wall doesn't say anything about it not being able to target it, so we'll see. But if it works in the wanted way, where you don't have to be Saboteur to get the random directions to make rolling magma deal a ton of damage, like let's say I fire 5 rolling magmas, and then they're half of their chain direction forward, like they've gone half of their chains. If this works, they will hit the wall, chain off, chain back in the other direction, and then you'll get the remaining hits. Like you could potentially, let's say you have your maximum number of chains here. Let's say you just have a 21-20 rolling magma with 6 chains. You'll have 3 chains on the way to the wall, and then it'll hit the wall, chain off, and then potentially have 3 more chains. And you could potentially get full damage on your rolling magma. So I don't know. We'll see if this one works. Unclear, just because I said it doesn't work with tornado. Blazing salvo, I think far too many projectiles for this deck should make sense, and they all shotgun inherently. Creeping frost, the ground targeting, all shotgun inherently by targeting the ground. And chain and return and weird stuff break creeping frost anyway. Forbidden right, ground targeting already does that. Ball lightning doesn't do that. Kinetic blast, the poster child of this, right? It's like the showcase video and what ZD was using with it. Obviously a very good use case for this. Yeah, not much else to say. Kinetic blast has a really bad spread problem, so you don't generally get that many hits as it is. You could technically sling tornado plus the wall and maybe get a 1 to 2 additional hits on this. Depends on how far you can set this up, but you'll definitely be able to get more hits out of the wall with Kinetic Blast. It's just not the most absurd one with it. The nice thing about Kinetic Blast is it's just one of the most satisfying skills to play in the entire game. Its clear is incredible. So getting to get single target out of potentially just using this one skill is awesome. Similar with Kinetic Blast to clustering. This one in particular, if you do the fork thing, assuming that, because the ground targeting ones I do not believe can actually chain further, so you don't actually eat that many hits. This one actually might be really good with the wall because let's say that you sling the tornado and the wall's behind it. I don't know how you're going to set that up, honestly, to be properly positioned. But you you have a double fork setup. There's a new fork mastery, by the way, the one that they got rid of the rune graft of recompense, but for as jerks. But you have projectiles fire maximum 1 projectile, but they do fork and chain, I believe. Or is it fork or chain? I forget how it's worded, but it can fork when it hits the tornado. You get to do forks if you use fork support, and then this or awaken fork, whatever. 1 will hit the tornado, fork into 2 projectiles, and then they could potentially hit the wall, which will then create 2 additional circles, because it'll be a circle off the tornado from the 1, and then it'll hit the wall again, and then create 2 additional circles when it does that. So it's kind of honestly maybe one of the best possible cases for this. Probably not. I don't know. It's already so good with tornado, but it depends on if you can get the positioning right. This one's going to be weirder because you ideally get you want the tornado in front and then the wall behind, just because you can only collide one thing with the tornado, and you can collide multiple with the wall. So we'll see how that one works. And then honestly, that's pretty much it. I know this video quality is going to be a little shitty. I didn't really have time to get it edited because I probably feel like a girl without her makeup or something. But I saw Ziggity's video and I just couldn't not talk about it. I love stuff like this, just abusing hit count and just collision stuff like this. It's just so fun for me. I don't know why that tickles a part of my brain. It does, but I really hope this number of 13 goes up as it levels. But if it doesn't, it's going to be a lot more fair, and you'll definitely want to be using it with lower hit count skills, or have so much damage that it just, when you shatter the wall, it blows up the thing you're hitting anyway. So, but I guess we'll see. I'm sure I missed tons of stuff, honestly. So if you guys have any cool suggestions or something that I totally didn't cover, please leave a comment so either I know about it or we can talk about it, because, yeah, I'm stoked. All right, poops in, butts out.